Hello everyone, my name is Zeph and welcome to the Star Network podcast. Today we have our guest, Andrea Iyamah, who's the CEO and founder of the Andrea Iyamah brand. Hi Andrea, it's good to have you here.
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. It's amazing that you're here. I'm really happy that you could actually join us today.
Thank you. I did it for you. Listen,
I'm glad.
If I want to be honest.
Yeah. I'm glad. I know podcasting is not your thing,
nope,
but I guarantee
it's not.
I guarantee you that this will be such a fun session and people want
so.
to hear from the famous Andrea Iyamah brand.
Oh gosh.
Yes. So tell us about it. How did you realize that fashion was the thing for you? When was that light bulb moment?
I don't know if it's a light bulb moment. I think I was just born into a very stylish family, which I'm happy about. So I think it's a natural for my family and I. And I think also just being able to, confidence was a very big thing for my parents. So how you looked was very important to them, how you carried yourself. So I would say it was just born into me. Fashion wasn't something I just kind of discovered. I saw my mom have purple hair. I saw my dad, he was a businessman, but on the weekends he was in his bright colorful shirts, he had a lot of those print sets. So I really saw them express themselves. So it was a norm for me to kind of naturally get into it from a background.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I like you're able to even provide that context about your family, because I feel like these things, it's almost like nature nurture. Like we don't even realize how like our parents have such a huge influence on us.
Yeah.
And I do remember, your mom is actually quite like funky. Every time I see her, I'm like,
she's like Queen Funky. I mean, her nickname was Madam Sleek.
Oh, I love that.
So, like,
I absolutely love that. I know you started Andrea at the age of 17, when you were in uni. So even though you had that background from family and, it's something that's innate, but how are you able to just balance being in school and starting a business?
Yeah, it was crazy. Balancing it with school. I think first of all, you're really supposed to just be in school. But I think when you have just sort of a burning desire to want to start something special, it was very difficult being a full-time undergrad and trying to run or build a brand. But to be honest, it was really once you have the mental decision to do something, you kind of pull the source and power from wherever it comes from God, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to pull this through. So it really was just step by step. I think, being able to already have the sewing skills kind of made that a bit easier, because while I was in university, I would spend like half my day or sometimes a full day at school, and then towards the evening I would spend a lot of time creating things. So at that time, I think in the beginning I had a blog. That was the time where Blogspot was really a thing. Yeah, it was a thing. So I would just create pieces, put them together, and then like put it up on my blog, and then people would just kind of reel into it, and it just kind of grew from there. So in essence, I think I just wanted to start anyways, see what it's like. I think the advantage of when you're young is that you have a little bit of room for mistake. So I think that when people say that, oh, you were so young, how did you do that? I'm like, well, when you're young, you have a crazy mind.
Exactly.
So you kind of want to take advantage. More, you're happy to take more risks. You have sort of less to lose. So that was really it. And then doing that slowly, and one thing led to the other. You make one piece and then two pieces. And at the time, the online world was really on the rise. So it was very easy for things you put out there to kind of take fire.
Correct.
Yeah.
So amazing. And I think even just for our audience listening or people who want to go into fashion, so it seems like starting quite young is actually the best place.
Yeah, I think I mean, your youth is really
the time to express.
It's the time to express, and obviously you hope to be responsible enough to also still understand the important things. But yeah, I always encourage, I'm always encouraging young people to like try new things, try what's burning in their spirits. I do think that everyone's kind of born with a fire in them. If you can explore it early enough, that's the advantage. And if you can even explore it even when you're older, but the point is you should explore whatever it really is calling to you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I have a very similar mindset in that regard. So I feel like people can have like multiple talents. So let's say you are gifted with 10 different skills, and it's kind of then your responsibility to try all the different things, right? I never tell people try one thing, try all 10. And then the one that you gravitate towards the most is probably the one that you should probably prioritize, or the one that is it's becoming more successful, it then becomes clear that this is the path.
Yes.
So I like that. I like that you are able to balance things out. But let's talk about your results wear brand. As you know and can see, I'm wearing your Halima set, which I absolutely love. It's so interesting because for me it's like the perfect, like when I'm on holiday vibes, and also perfect for our climate in Lagos. It's always hot. So yeah, what was this inspiration behind the results wear?
So the resort wear line in general, I mean, the idea is it does gravitate towards travel. Discovery is a very key message for the brand Andrea Iyamah. We want women to be able to kind of expand their world, and we want to create pieces that make them think about expanding their world, and that's really the touch and travel. So the inspiration for every collection is quite different. Sometimes it could be kind of socially influenced, or sometimes it's from me or the design team. So once we have that, idea from a concept, I mean, this one you're wearing it's the eucalyptus print. It was during I think I was creating this around the COVID time, slightly before COVID, and in that time a lot of people were looking for healing, both medically, mentally. There was the concept of healing was quite prominent in the world as a whole. So however, my mom, during that time, I mean, I spent some of the best months with my mom. I don't think I can ever get that again. And so we spent a lot of time together, and she's a fantastic cook. And she also just knows a lot of medicinal leaves, things. She's just that kind of person. So I think during that time, she started sort of using the eucalyptus oil for, inhalation. I mean, that time everyone was just trying to make sure that they were protected. I found it very interesting that at the same time I was creating this collection, we were using that oil quite frequently in the house. It's a very strong, very small amount of it does a lot. So you really just want to put like a tiny drop in a bowl of hot water, and you just inhale that. So I felt like, the collection, I wanted it to sort of do a little bit of that, where you wear it and you feel at ease, you feel calm. There's a sense of cleansing that you feel with the pieces, with the fabric. I mean, it's a nice linen. So I think that's something that we always do with every collection. You see, there's so much intention behind it. And this was one of the best-selling prints, which is interesting because usually the prints that do the best are like the ones that have more reds and yellows. So this was the first time like it was more green, blue, and it did really, really well. So I was really excited about this collection, and we also did a fantastic, runway show on the beach for this collection. So it was definitely something we pushed ourselves in the entire process of creating it.
That's amazing. And I think even just hearing the story behind like the creation of the print, it's not just what is the pattern or trend, but how you're able to tie it back to like a personal experience of during COVID, during the healing period, using eucalyptus. Like I'm the consumer, I will just see it and just buy it and not think about the story. So it's nice to hear firsthand the journey behind that. But your results wear brand, it's been labeled as the leading results wear brand in Forbes, Huffington Post, Vogue, etc., which is phenomenal. I love seeing Nigerian people win and do amazing things such as your brand. What has that experience been like? I think particularly, being a local brand that has been able to expand internationally. I know you have a flagship store in New York and in Canada. What was that process like, and what challenges did you face?
I think with everything, the process really was the original intention. Although I loved fashion, being born into it, the real goal and the narrative was, how do you redefine and push the African story and narrative globally? So I always thought global. That was always a part of the intention. And the question was, how do you do that at 17? You're not going to come and start spending money and throwing stores around. So at the time, my background in university is, has a lot to do with coding, tech, communications, media. I know, so a lot of people don't know that. No, I didn't go to fashion school. So my years in university was a lot of research. I mean, I would write. You're submitting papers every other day, and then a lot of time spent with, technology, coding, new languages. So that being said, in doing that, it was, how do you, transform or, move these products to the world without physically being there. So the e-commerce language was a very big part of the brand strategy. At that time, we were all shopping online, but it wasn't as intensely. So I knew that, I had the advantage of my degree and my experience to be able to build our first website. It looked very professional.
You built your first website yourself. Absolutely. Oh, amazing.
From making the clothes to building the websites, doing the packaging, I was, doing every single layer. And I think the good thing about doing all the layers is that when you're now starting to scale, the areas to scale. So I always tell my team, I'm like, I did your area. So I'm not telling you, I'm not saying just do it. I'm saying I've done it before. And the good thing about that, I was able to sort of really build the relevant steps. So in that e-commerce conversation of things, it was quite, by the time we got into the hang of production, we were able to sort of move that forward, and the orders, just grew and grew, and then we got our first office, and then the team grew, and it kind of took on from there. B2B also was a very big part of our strategy, so being able to be in department stores. But then I felt like before you get into the department stores, you want to prove your market, prove your audience, test it in a bit of a smaller sample. So it was good to see that it already took off. So by the time it was time for B2B, the concept of scale wasn't very scary. So being in the department stores like Saks and etc., scale wasn't something that intimidated me as a child, and also doing it further. So I felt like Africa was always looked at from a landscape of like potential. We're tired of hearing potential. And so I knew the limitations of the continent, of the country specifically. Production locally was going to be hard. So we had to mix manufacturing to be able to just even see, does the market exist? And once that was proven, and then we just kind of expanded the templates. And so we sort of have working templates that we modify now and then, but there's a template that we kind of work with, and people always say, how has it been that consistent? I'm like, because once you have templates and systems,
it's easy to scale.
You're able to scale, and you modify as necessary, obviously, but to scale, your creativity does need structure. And that's something that I'm always sort of like,
adamant about
talking about, because it's very easy as a creative to kind of be fluid. So I tend to sort of have a decent balance between creativity and structure. So yeah, the brand as a whole, when creatives come in and they're hired, they're kind of shocked at the amount of like sensitivity to systems that we have. every part of the puzzle affects the other parts. The domino effect of things. Correct. So production, logistics, operations, the design department is only a subsect. So when people call me a fashion designer, I laugh because
it's way beyond that.
I wish that's what I actually did every single day. That would be the fun part. But it's really, you're running, a very large scale operational system to be able to meet the demand of, the online world and also the B2B world. So yeah, we just sort of like scaled that.
And it's so interesting you've said that. I particularly like, for people who want to go into this space and just assume it's just about, coming up with great designs and creativity, as you said, is just one aspect of it. But I think you've pretty much just given the answer to why Andrea has a lot of like scalability and longevity to the brand. Is you have structures in place. You actually come up with templates. You use those templates to then make different iterations and to apply to different markets. And I think a lot of businesses can learn from that, right?
The design stage is, I don't know, maybe 1% of my time. Of it. And even that, it's the design team has a system of how they work. So a lot of times I don't really have to be, the one approving things or the one like, so I come in more of, okay, what's the direction? There's, we do the research, we develop the products. And by the time you do this for long enough, you have sort of mastered silhouettes that work. So you're doing a balance between what works and then what's a bit new, so that you are still triggering innovation with the products you're developing. So that way things don't get stale. It's, fashion is very trendy.
Correct.
We try to not be too trendy, but kind of be in between. Okay, how do we think differently, but how do we also
you're in line with the times?
In line with times. And also, how do you do what works for the customer? So I mean, we've been doing this for almost 15 years now, so I think that we've kind of understood the mind of the customer that we cater to, and even the new ones, but still, having to be open to what else can she be about, how is she changing, because we all do change. And just keeping the brand alive, thinking about that.
No, and I'm happy that you've actually shared all this to me. I love that you've been able to, break down everything, the granularity to how you have processes in place. But even just, again, back on that expansion conversation of getting into new markets, was there anything that was so challenging? I like that you said it wasn't intimidating to scale per se, but even just for another brand that's listening or someone that wants to do the same thing, what were like core challenges you faced when it came to here it's time to open a flagship store in New York? Were there like regulation issues that were just completely different from Nigeria? What were those like, hard things that you had to then overcome?
No, I think that's interesting. So while we are Nigerian owned, I think that it's actually kind of the other way around. We sort of grew globally and then we brought it in locally, which was, that might have had to do with the fact that I was in Canada when I started the brand. But New York has been our biggest market for over, I don't know, since the inception of the brand. So the American market was a bigger market than the Nigerian market. The Nigerian market was a very small percentage, which then it grew a bit more as were intentional about growing it locally, like also opening a flagship store here as well. But so that being said, doing that, while we had always served the American market, not just New York, for years, it was e-commerce, right? So in these days where it is even more important today to get a bit closer and more intimate with your customer because there is a lot of distraction. Your attention can be pulled in multiple ways. There's options. So the question is, how do you stay in the mind of your customer? How do you make them see the value of what they're buying into, the story that you want them to tell with your pieces? So being closer to them in terms of getting into retail and saying, here's the product that you've been seeing online, here's how the touch feel, just increasing the touch points, because we did see the success of the Lagos store and what that did for the customers. I think also we tried to do e-commerce in Nigeria. It's a bit of a slower market to pick up on that sort of sales channel. So we found that the physical touch point was more important for the market here. We wanted to try that for New York. The challenges with that, while we were sort of familiar with the market from a digital perspective, I would say physically, New York is not a cheap place, and that's one. So it's very important that what we're learning now as the store is open is that AI's products are very heavy on resorts and travel wear. What's the thing with the New York, and at least the place we have the store at the moment, is that they're thinking of how to wear things in New York. While the pieces that we have are telling them to leave New York. So what happens then is that the merchandise has to be modified a bit. What you sell in Lagos might not do particularly well in New York. What you sell online might not be what you need to put in the store as well. So one of the challenges I would say is you have to now expand your merchandise in a different way, where your materialization is very different, because if you're going into fall winter in New York, it's now cold. So I'm not sure that bikinis might be the best thing or resort wear might be the strongest thing. So which means we have to expand our fall winter range, which is another, section again. So we've always had a fall winter collection, but it was a smaller edit compared to the resort wear. So now we're seeing that, okay, this is interesting. Which means we have to merchandise a bit different. So the merchandising department now has to think about, okay, we look at the inventory, we look at where do we move things to. The same thing with the UAE markets, right? When for us in the UAE, what moves for them might not be as much completely of what different moves. So I would say that one of the things to be aware of as any brand wants to go global is just understanding the amount of work it would take to actually diversify the products according to different regions, which means that your production is getting a bit more complex, which means that you have to be quite wise about how much you're investing in the product, to what markets, what is the marketing strategy like. For the Lagos market, for example, they shop very differently physically than the New York, and the New Yorker is on their way to somewhere. The Lagos market is coming to you. They've decided to stop there. You're not on the way for them, right? Because Lagos is already, you drive everywhere.
That's an interesting perspective. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yes, very different. So you don't know these things until you're physically there. And so these are the things you learn, and then you take that data and you modify. So it was very data driven to be in New York. It wasn't just like it's a nice thing to have. So it was very data driven. But then even with the data, and that's the thing, data is numbers, but when you're physically seeing people, so the colors also need to get a bit darker for the retail store in New York. They want a bit more black, grays, which is not really our palette.
Exactly.
So the question is, how do we take what people love or what they've loved so far and modify that? There's also a lot of discovery. When you're on a street store, it's quite different when you're online and you're targeting, familiar audiences. on the street. There's a lot of discovery, which we love. That's the point, to be able to also expand your reach on who you're serving. So I think that, expanding into retail or just even going global in general, I always ask people, one, you must be ready for the capacity that is required. Two, you must be ready for the cultural changes of a product that maybe you've had the way you've been doing it, and now it has to sort of change. And three, it does require quite a number of resources. So you need to have good partnerships. You need to be aware of the terrain of what that looks like as well, to sort of sustain it.
Yeah, correct. And I like that, and it's something that I preach about a lot when I have guests and we talk about brand expansion. Something I always repeatedly say is the market is so different in a different country. Absolutely. You can't use the template that you use here in Nigeria to work in New York, as we've just given the example. It's completely different. The consumers think differently. Yes, we may be attracted to the same brand, but the spending pattern is different.
Very,
how
very
we consume the information is different. And I like that you've been able to just extract data to say, okay, this is how it works here, and then this is how I can probably then take this template but then tweak to the local market nuances. I think that's very important. But you've mentioned something that is very key, and I like to touch on it, is about partnerships and teamwork. You're only as good as your team. I like that you mentioned before you started, you had built out your first website. Now today you have a team who does all the digital work for you. You're able to then be in the head because you have exposure to it. But I think talent sourcing in Nigeria today remains very difficult. It's critical to every business, but very difficult in finding the right talent. Not because Nigerians are not intelligent. I actually think we're extremely gifted people. It seems like Andrea you've cracked it, right? And you can laugh at that. I'm happy you're laughing. But it appears as you've cracked it.
I love how you said
exactly. It appears as you've cracked it because there's efficiency, whether it's I'm shopping online, I'm going into the store, or there's even an activation. So how are you then able to find the right talent?
So that's a very, very big question. I think that similar to the templates thing, let me speak on the Nigerian team specifically. Talented people, like you said, have a lot of grit. I would say, particular to the creative industry, because that's what I can speak to, it's still a developing industry here. We see the differences between the operations and the team here and the ones outside the country. So I feel like what we've been able to do is it's a whole lot of training on the job. I think it's also a mentality thing that we have where Nigerians, when they, at least from what I've seen, is work for them is almost from a place of intimidation. It's almost like they don't see themselves in that value of that position. So from a mindset thing, we have to kind of train our team to be confident, right? You cannot sell what you don't believe in. And usually Nigerian customers are naturally a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
So it's, first of all, the mindset had to sort of, change. You have to, pick up your shoulder, like you can actually speak to the person you're speaking to. So I think one of the feedback we've gotten is that, oh my God, the team is so confident. I'm like, so we had to first start with a mindset thing before we even talk about, the skill and the training. And this is one, listening to them a bit more, hearing how they would like to be valued or feel valued, making them a part of the success, which is, whether that could look like commissions or whatever it is, structure them into the success of, the brand. You need to understand that the business too must feed into impacting them. What is their life looking like as well? So this could look like also giving them things outside of, a salary or anything. This could be, sometimes they each have like spa dates, gifted from the company. And these are just things that really appreciating the team member is very key for them to help, manage how they think about work, why they're here. There is more teamwork and hierarchy being communicated. So everyone knows, obviously, there is positions that are key. But everyone is just as important as the other person. Everyone benefits from the success, from the stewards all the way to the managers. Commissions is not just on the sales floor. It's when there's progress, everybody benefits from it. So everybody knows the role that they're playing in. So that's on the sort of like mentality, sort of culture of the company angle. I think the other end of it is the skill training. Like I said, the creative industry is a developing industry when it comes to the business of it. There's a lot of talent, amazing talent. But when it comes to the structure, it's something that is still being worked on. So when we hire here, they come in and they feel like it's just processes or these people are extra, but they see at some point that it does benefit them. So there's lots of training, there's systems being put in place, there's templates being put in place. They understand the importance of why this campaign is happening, why it has to happen this way, and they are also working a lot with the international end of things. So they both kind of like, you know, work together to improve each other. The international team learns from the Nigerian team learns from them, and structure is being passed across. So, you know, I meet like former employees and we try to maintain a good relationship with the former employees. And I remember I bumped into one of them. He was like, I've not been able to work in another creative, or fashion brand so far because so he started actually, you know, doing that for brands, you know, helping them put together some structure in there. He was like, when I first came, I thought it was so extra how we have to do this documentation. But then he saw how it benefited that. And you cannot scale or maintain a system that runs itself without having that structure. So trainings are important. You know, having them be part of why they are here. Like, what am I here for? This is not just a job. This is how you play into the bigger picture. This is our values. And if it doesn't work for you, you probably shouldn't be here. And sometimes when I see an employee is not performing at their best here, and I'm like, you need to be where you feel most connected. Because I can say all of this, and if you don't connect here, you don't connect here. So I think also communicating, you know, purpose-driven work is our kind of like our narrative there. It's like, you need to be here intentionally because you will not be able to survive if it's not part of your intentions. So yes, there's a lot of more psychological training. I mean, thank God it's been quite a decent experience for most people. We see the reviews. There's a lot. Every experience is reviewed. As you're leaving, they're asking you to review. So these things, they take the feedback and understanding that we are listening to the customers as much as we are listening to the team. Every year we have sort of a different theme we want to focus on besides just sales and grow revenue. But there was a year I was just like, I would like to sort of do a rinsing from the inside out, which means that the team must be as valued as the customer because they are the core of what we're doing. We cannot do it without the team. Yes, the leadership is key, but the team have to have joy in what they're doing. So we started implementing, unique things, more 360s. So we call this like the thing we call the 360s, which is every quarter you review them. And it's not just how well are you doing, they get to rate management as well. So we hear from them. So I can see a rating and I say, they get to rate me as well because I need to hear. So really ensuring that there is sort of like a two-way communication of ratings, and most of it is anonymous. So the idea is that, okay, we hear the team hears us, and that way we try to improve and get better.
I really like this. And the first thing that's coming to my mind is I have so many young people that say, they want to work in a fashion brand. And I'm actually going to tell them, go on internet, Andrea. Not because I like what you've produced, but I like that I'm hearing about the structure. Yeah. You are actually running the Andrea brand as a company. Processes, checks, balances, accountability, feedback. And this is the integrity that is needed across brands in Nigeria for them to be able to scale. So I really like that. I also like, in terms of your team structuring, you said it's not just a task. You're not just telling someone, send this email for me or go and check inventory for me. And they're not just there because they want to be able to profit or take a salary home. Yes, that is critical to survival. But at the end of the day, it's about them believing in that journey and the story to why they're doing it. So I really like that. What is something that you found extremely memorable till date since you started the Andrea brand? It could be anything. I'm sure you've had like so many things to like reminisce on. What is something that is extremely memorable for you, and something that is also, when you reflect on it, you realize, this was extremely challenging for me since building this business?
Wow, something. I wish there was one something. There's been so many things. I would say that COVID was an interesting year because, travel had stopped, and travel stopping meant, that was very risky time for the brand. I think in that time, something that really touched my heart was we realized just how loyal the Andrea Iyamah customers are, because people were still buying swimwear
during COVID. Where were they traveling? Probably just swimming around.
And that's the thing, they weren't even buying it to use it. And I think that's when I realized that brands is not just the products you're buying. There's something that your brand represents for them, this element of it. And I think the messaging around them shopping still during COVID, while naturally the numbers had dropped a little bit, just the fact that there was even just still purchases was what the brand represents for them. It was this sense of happiness. I'm just going to still order it because, and then they would hope for when things open up, this is going to be a part of my story. And that's, for me, the element of a successful product, when you're able to get into the happy point of a person, even when it's not particular for the use of what you created it for. You know, you can sell things functionally. Here's a bikini, go to the beach and swim. But when people buy into something and it's more of an emotional connection to their happy place and what it represents for them. So for me, we learned and we realized that, what we're creating represents freedom. It represents loyalty. It represents so much more than I need to go shopping to travel. Here's some nice dresses to go. It's, this brand is a part of, you know, me being in my happy form, in my true form, and it's a part of my story. So we saw that, and I think that's when we realized that that's the point that we want to get to, and the point we want to continue to maintain is, how do you represent the elements of expansion in the customer's mind? So products are not just products. There's always going to be things to buy, to wear. The question is, what's your intention behind it? What does this represent for your customer? And just increasing that relationship, getting them more in the grain of why we're creating the pieces, the process of creating it, the consistency of it, the products we expand into to make them think we are thinking of them. So for example, when you start with a particular product, how do you expand into other things that are connected to the core product? So at the time, more of our heavy hitters were the swimwear, and the swimwear, then we added cover-ups, and then we added the slippers, and then we added the maxi dress, and then you grow into that world of what she's already existing in, because you're thinking about her. You're thinking, okay, she's already going to be here, what else does she need, and how do we cater to that requirement, and how do we do it in the way that she likes, you know? So because there was a time when we created a ready-to-wear collection that was quite formal, and then the swimwear was there, and then this ready-to-wear collection didn't do well because it didn't speak to the lifestyle of the girl who's traveling. So we had to now flip the chart again and say, okay, how do we take things from this angle that is successful, so that you are not I'm the kind of person, when something is going successful, everything has its seasons, right? So you have to still kind of look ahead of the success and think about, okay, after this, what next? So while the company and the brand can be working on the today, I have to kind of look ahead. I'm like, guys, okay, swimsuits is great now, but it's going to slow down. We need to start getting into ready to wear. At the time, it seemed like an expensive venture, but swimsuit did eventually slow down a little bit. And then now the ready to wear is on the top. So you just have to, and then as the ready to wear is on top, I said, let's seed accessories. And they're like, no, accessories are too high. I'm like, let's seed it, right? The idea is that at some point, you know, the journey is not one picture at once. You know, as you grow, when you go 20, 30, 40, 50 years in, the moment you have an Andrea Iyamah resort or Andrea Iyamah hotel, it's not random, because you've
all those moving pieces.
You've seeded what this world looks like, you know, and how this is going through. And even if you decide to go into skincare or beauty products, it's not off brand, because that is her world. And the question is, how do you bring the DNA and the essence of the brand into that product, right? So,
and it's interesting you said that, because you know, you have Andrew living as well. And I like that you touched on, if there's then growth into like other things like a hotel, it doesn't seem so random. It's all connected. You also have Andrew living. And I remember when I saw that, I generally was excited because I love home aesthetic. So whether or not it was aligned, it caught my eye. But then when I went into the store to shop and I went to go buy clothes, and then I saw, you know, your little like sets of like plates, wooden spoons. And to me, in my world, I was like, this is actually very aligned, because it's a lifestyle, right? It's like, I'm shopping for homeware, but then the specific things that you sell in Andrew Living are very rustic. It still ties into resort wear as a theme.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of brands are now trying this whole like concept store narrative. Some have gotten it, but I think you've done it well. So is it the same team that manages Andrea Clothing Wear Ready to Wear that then manages Andrew Living, or is it like a separation and just like complete division of labor?
So it is separate. It is separate, but they're all under the same umbrella of Essence. Okay. That's what we call it. So it's like, they call each other siblings, right? So the team for Andrew, because they work also very heavily on projects like homes and, office spaces and stuff like that, while Andrea Iyamah is more, readily available things to buy. So they understand the relevance of both of them to each other because they both have the same customers, right? And the essence is that when you put it in the same space, it should say the same, similar stories. So it's a different team on the back end, but they work very closely together still, just to sort of ensure that culturally the team is still in sync, right?
Correct, yeah.
And then because it's still kind of me sort of like leading that vision and idea, it still kind of has very, very similar aesthetics. And I think for us, the narrative is just creating a full picture of an elevated lifestyle that very well pulls into the storytelling, and not always an African story that we're telling, but just stories that are very intentional, stories that really aid discovery. With Andrew Living, the pieces, you look at it and you think of where did it come from, or how was it made, or what was the story behind it, because you can see that it's different. So it's things that visually exciting, things that give you this sense of, okay, if I have this piece, I know I won't just pass it by, I would take a second look. That's what we try to do with our designs of our clothing wear or the home goods as well.
Yeah, no, I really like that. That's nice. Okay. And then you've not mentioned the most challenging thing, but I can come back to that. Just before we close, I know you also have Seed Ambition.
Yes.
So obviously that's more like NGO focused, impact based. What is the genesis behind that?
So the genesis of Seed Ambition was the fact that as the brand was growing, we realized that it was inspiring more than we even planned for it to inspire, in terms of the customers too. There was now another sort of audience that it was growing, which was brands that were also trying to do similar things to us. And I think at that point, when you're growing a brand and you start to reach your targets, right? Maybe you have, we want to make this amount of money this year, and then you reach that target, and then you ask yourself, okay, so are we just going to reach the next target again? So I started to just question, and I question a lot. That's my personality. What's the point of this journey? What's the point of? And I realized that the trigger for us is that there needs to be more great brands, whether from Africa or from all over the world. There needs to be more, and for there to be more, there needs to be resources available for brands to be great. So while they will experience their own unique experiences, what Seed Ambition was designed to do is provide the resources, whether it be knowledge, whether it be grants where necessary, whether it be seminars, just training. So the idea of that's the idea. So the goal was to partner with organizations, or also just offer to members, access to what are we supposed to really know if we're creative, and how do we scale, how do we, even before scaling, how do we structure. And we do that on a daily basis, just giving tips, seminars, classes, whatever.
And are the trainings particularly just focused on fashion, or is it
no.
anything?
So
it's
business quite wide. It's business as a whole, but it does have an attention to the creative industry.
Got it.
So fashion being one of it, the arts, media, film, beauty industries that are so powerful economically, but usually underlooked in terms of the attention to grow it, right? So we look at the creative industry like a nice to have, but it's so core. Every day we will wear clothes, every day we will touch ourselves in terms of our hair, how we look. Every day we will watch something, we would interact with media at some point. But these industries are not being looked at as one viable industries to invest in. To the creatives are choosing it almost more like I guess I'm going to choose it, as opposed to a lot of intention. These are very, very viable industries. The US banks a lot on the fact that their media and entertainment industry is huge, right?
Correct.
So we do have that, and the question is, how do you incubate the next generation of people to think that one, scale is possible, the global landscape is possible, and just doing things effectively like with a bit of structure. So that's what Seed Ambition is there for. And it's grown with amazing members, and I'm hoping to partner with more organizations to say, okay, here's how to really genuinely care about their training. It's not just throwing it at sponsorships and stuff. It's genuinely training that. And I've been able to have those experiences from the marketing to the product to the back end. Like there's a wealth of experience that I've had over the years that I can say, okay, here you go. And not besides my experiences, I'm constantly learning. I'm a bookworm, so I'm constantly reading, constantly studying on how to prove things. So I want to do that for other people as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's very powerful. And I like that you mentioned about just investment in the creativity space. So I had a speaker 2 weeks ago, and she's also in the creativity space. And something that I brought up was funding. And I said, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of VC investments into the creative space. It's just like fintech, health tech, edtech. And although those sectors are paramount, no one is really putting enough cash into these areas. So a recommendation that I put forward is, but as a brand, while we're waiting for VCs, if you are big enough, you can create that environment for grants and sponsorships. You be the VC because you've learned it, you have the template, and then use that as a source of, call it CSR as you will, but use that as an avenue to then empower brands. So when I saw that you did Seed Ambition, I was like, okay, this is good. Like, Andrea actually gets this. Like, it's not just about Andrea as a whole, but it's about the wider impacts beyond just your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really like that.
Yeah, I think it's because, you don't change a narrative with one thing or one person or one brand. The narrative of a nation, of a culture is through the multiple. So when you think about, foreign brands, you don't just think of one Italian brand or one French brand. You say the French brands are, or the Italian brands are known for quality. Or, what is Africa known for? It's known for creativity and a lot of bountiful, resources. But what else? And the reality is, how do we take that creativity that we're known for? If you come to Africa, things will be different. But how do we really make that economically stand? One brand is great, but many is greater. So I think that that's the idea. That's the idea for us to push it. So from that incubating the early stage, I'm hoping that as, I'm seeing a bit of more attention coming to it, but there's very little understanding of the industry. So I'm hoping that the attention and the funding coming to it can also partner with both local and foreign bodies to be able to say, and brands to be able to, okay, this is how you plug it in, right? Fashion weeks are great, but fashion weeks are just a section.
Correct.
A section. It's a marketing strategy, but the products need to exist. They need to live. How and where are people manufacturing? If it's not that, okay, what about the marketing? What about the customer service? There are many layers that if manufacturing is not at our best strength now, locally, what are the other areas in the vertical that we can sort of contribute?
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. Have you thought about the most challenging thing? Because I do have the last question. What is
the most challenging thing? I wouldn't say there's a most. There's different types of challenges, and I think because there's different spheres of the business, I think so far these challenges come in seasons. Now we're in more, while you grow, you now think of how to maintain growth, how to maintain the scale. So it can be quite challenging to, keep it alive through the seasons. And what that means is sales come up, down, but how do you keep a brand alive? And we constantly connect to our why, to our essence, but you have to keep sort of scaling, right? If that's part of the brand vision. So the question is, how do you scale? Because we don't have any investors or anything like that. So the idea is, how do you keep doing that in-house? At what point do you really know it's time to tip over? At what point are you going to keep it the way you are doing it? And then even if that was the case, how do you really know who's genuinely going to understand the narrative, right, of what you're trying to do? Especially, like I said, it's a creative industry. If I go to people with any attractive tech thing, they're going to jump on it because it seems like the easiest thing to scale. But fashion is difficult. So I think one of those things is really getting people to get into the understanding of the potential of what this is. So while they see the brand and they love it and they say, okay, this looks great, even when you get into the crop of, okay, how do we make it even greater, there's a bit of lack of knowledge and confusion of it. So you're really just kind of doing things on your own and proving the concept, and you keep going. So the challenge is, it could even be bigger, even whether for the brand or even for other brands, if we just had a bit more attention to the investment into the industry to standardize it and see it as a viable option.
I like that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I asked my guests, all my guests, this question: what is your favorite quote and why? If you don't have a favorite quote, it could just be something that's resonated with you.
I think for me, fear is something that is I think very important. And for me, I see fear as a catalyst to doing crazy great things. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of people use fear as a reason to pull back. For me, when you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. So I think less of a quote, but just more of a way of thinking. I believe that most battles has to be won in your mind before you even start it. So, and that's that fear, combating fear. And I think that fear is supposed to feel that strongly because it's supposed to feel why you do things really well as well, and why you're going to, push it like this as opposed to why you're going to sit back. So it's one, I would say, ingredient that can do two things at the same time. It can make a pot of soup very bitter or very sweet. And it's really more about your choice and how you stir it. So I think for me, I have to have a good relationship with fear. It's something that is inevitably going to be there. And nobody really knows what is in front of them. But you just keep going. And once you have your mindset that you will do something, it's already like half solved. And then the rest of it is actually doing the thing.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a very different and interesting perspective.
Yeah.
I've actually picked up on that and I've locked it in. I'm going to meditate on that more because for me, just the concept of fear actually doesn't propel me.
Yeah.
The concept of fear is like, okay, I'll pause, I'll take a step back, I'll give myself time, then I'll come back to it when I don't feel afraid.
My mind is like, I need to sort of sit down with it and have a very, okay, why is it that you're scared? And then I'm a very, like I said,
you seem very granular.
Yes,
like you map it out.
I map it out. Like, okay, and I start to list a lot of things in our heads. It's hitting the walls of our heads because we haven't really laid it out in front of us. So when I lay it out and then you look at the bite-sized reasons why something is scary to you, and then each of those things, most of the time, you can address it. You can actually address it and be like, okay, I'm scared because I don't have the knowledge. Okay, so how do I get the knowledge? I'm scared because I don't know if it will be sustained. Okay, so what are the things that will sustain it? Okay, how do I get those things that will sustain it? Looking at it, there's always a reason behind it. Then you address that reason. So usually it's not always the fear itself, but it's the reason why the fear is coming, and then you address those reasons.
Yeah.
And then you can now start to say, okay, fear, okay, I'm going to need you to sit on the side for a bit while I do this. And the truth is, you may win sometimes and you may not win sometimes, right? So, and that's just life. But the idea is that once you've made up your mind that if I lose, I go. If I win, I go.
Yeah.
Everything is a go.
Everything falls through. No, I like this because for me, this is beyond just here is business 101, like practical tips to scaling and growing a business. But it also sounds like as an entrepreneur and a CEO, there's a lot of deep work that has to take place to be able to even then scale a business, manage a team. And I think everything you've said is quite it sticks out a lot, especially for me. It sticks out a lot. There has to be a lot of deep work and there has to be a lot of self-realization, and also for the people that are also part of your journey. So I really like this. I think our audience is going to learn a lot. I think this was a lot of fun. But yeah, this has been great. So guys, you've heard from Andrea Iyamah about starting a business, using fear as a catalyst. Don't forget to follow our page at the Star Network Pod to be able to find out about more episodes. If you want to learn more about the Andrea brand, you can follow that social media handle. What's your social media handle?
Well, my personal one is andrea.oi, and then the brand one is Andrea Iyamah.
Correct. So guys, don't forget to get all your results well aligned. I mean, summer is coming. But yeah, until next time. Bye.